Do You Still Love Me is different than the rest of the album because it's the only song on the record that had a full band. And I had a session with them. It was like a rehearsal that turned into kind of also like a let's see what happens in the studio, at my studio kind of thing. And so we did like 5 takes. And then I came up with these ideas of these false starts on guitar, which is kind of very AC/DC. On that juxtaposition is weird. But I imagine it in my mind as being like, this is Prince, but this is Prince with like a couple of Les Pauls. I just wanted to know what that was like. From the first taste of it, I was like, this is rad. So built the arrangement, got to a chorus that I first didn't love, and then I changed the chorus into this thing that was just more major to open, like I knew I wanted it to sort of break into something with slight rub in between the chords for tension. As soon as I found it, I was already singing these words, and I didn't even have to write them down. We got to the 3rd take, and I was like, man, it's getting really good. So I had to remember what I'd sang, so I had to kind of write it down for 2 seconds. But I thought that I had written the 2nd verse, but I hadn't. So when you listen to that song, you're actually listening to us just figure out how to play it, and I'm ad-libbing the words. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, wow, this vocal, after we were done, I was like, this vocal's good. Like, it's not bad. And I like the words, like, they make sense to me. And I just remember later, I was like, I don't think I wrote any of this down. It was kind of the way the rest of the record ended up going.
Same great clothes. I know my friends don't know.
Prisoner is one of the first 4 songs written for the record on the back of the tour bus. And it's one of the songs that when it was written, which happened within like 4 or 5 minutes, I knew that I had to go to New York right away and start recording. And I was on the road still promoting the self-titled album. So we were all pretty tired already, but I was getting off of the tour after 2 weeks, and then like booking tickets to fly into New York, and they would set up the studio the night before or that day, and I'd fly in, and then I'd go meet Johnny that played drums on the record, and we would go in, and right away we would just go in this setup that I had, which was I would play acoustic or electric with a live vocal, and he would play drums. And I brought some of the songs from the road in to record them, but most of them were written just in that same automatic way. But with him and no one else around, it's easier because I get to play the bass line after, and there's no one to mess up the bass line to recut the track, or there's no one to play a wrong guitar thing, or it's all just going to be stuff that's in my mind. But Prisoner is a beautiful song, and that feeling about that song was in me for a long time because it really is about realizing, the moment you realize that you're free from something, you're free from a trap that you maybe have set for yourself that's not real.
Mother, we can do better than this. Mother, how can you complicate this? Mother, you love me now.
Doomsday is interesting because only in the line it says, you said you love me now until Doomsday comes. Well, did Doomsday come? Like, I asked that question. And yeah, it feels a lot like Since the Orange Monster somehow, you know, I don't know how, happened, that it's been pretty weird. It's been pretty, as people are saying, Orwellian. But yeah, that song, I'd had the riff for a little bit of time, and I sort of knew the scope of what I wanted to say in the song. It preceded a lot of the other songs because it was an idea that I brought into the record when I was messing around with Linn drums. I got a Linn drum because I really wanted the John Porter, How Soon Is Now, whatever Johnny Marr was looking for in the Linn, like whatever they were able to find in that. Now that I've read the book, I realized he was writing something he thought was like the Gun Club, which is pretty wild. But somehow that song plus the Linn drum, man, it really instigated a thing for me to just even try it. I went, wow. And I sat down, I finished the lyrics. They made perfect sense. Some stuff that I'd only ever been mumbling, I didn't know what it was about, became real defined lines in the chorus. The second chorus became a double chorus. And I cut it once.
Yeah, I don't wanna live as haunted house anymore.
Haunted house is funny, maybe because the house I live in now is haunted, but not in a bad way. They're just vibes to my home. Less now that I got my cats, and then adopted another cat. I don't think whatever spirits were there like my cats, but my cats are big Norwegian forest cats, and pretty much anybody that would mess with them would really soon regret it. But the origin of the song was me. I wanted to talk about how the home that I had lived in for a long time, that I had left, and eventually would get my things out of and set up a new home, how the feeling of it even before I left was that it was, even though it wasn't haunted as it might as well have been, it was haunted from the past, haunted from the memories that were there, all the good memories. There weren't bad memories, but the things you let go of, you know, and how funny it is that my feeling about this really tranquil place, and I'm sure it was mutual, it changes because then it reminds you of positive things, great things that now are gone. And I wanted to describe that feeling of being lost in your own home, really.
I missed you so much, a shiver in a shade. I missed you so much, a shiver in a shade.
Shiver and Shake is it's a song that really, in the scope of demystifying the record, it's a song that came to me later, and it had to do with, I was married and then I got divorced, and in the process of getting divorced, it can sometimes take a long time. And that time, you will date. You might date, you might not. In my case, I did, you know. I mean, I think it's normal. You sort of try to find your way, and I sort of found a relationship that I assumed was going to be like the greatest thing, and it was a teachable relationship for me, and I learned a lot from it. But one of the things is that everything is not a forever thing. I mean, that's kind of the record in itself, is that it's sort of me trying to give myself a break, and yet romantically say attachment to permanence, and the idea that romance and permanence and the idea of the safety of that, it's an illusion. It doesn't mean that everything is going to always fail, or that it's wrong to be a fool. In fact, I think that the fool, for me, is it means that you're open-hearted and allowing myself to break again, to crush and break so soon.
Every night is lonesome and is longer than before. Nothing really matters anymore.
So, To Be Without You. I don't think it's good for people to know too much personal information about a record. Having said that, the song was written in two different phases. For a long time, it was just the first two verses. And then my best friend and I weren't able to see each other for a while. And I filled in the blanks in the end with thinking about that. Anything I Say to You Now was me and Johnny jamming in the studio without writing anything down, and I was trying to write a Tears for Fears song on guitar that felt like Tears for Fears and the Smiths and Simple Minds members were jamming. But there was only two of us, Johnny and me. So I put the guitar on, I didn't think about anything at all, and I just started playing that riff, and I'm so fucking glad that I did, because it's my favorite riff ever to play. And at the time, the exhilaration of playing it was out of this world. We cut it again, but nothing was ever going to touch the first time that we cut it, because it was incredible, like right out of the bat. Johnny's playing, he knew where I was going somehow in his mind. He always is like that with me. He's predictive, and some magical force holds us together when we're jamming. And I guess I sort of just knew the narrative. I mean, I can imagine kind of what the narrative is going to be, and in that song, it made sense. Breakdown to me actually weirdly started because I really love, I love metal, and I love like 90s metal stuff that got bigger, like Alice in Chains, like bands that sort of like break the mold of what you know as contemporary metal. And somehow that stuff kind of, it sits with me in a different way, and I wanted to play a 12-string guitar, and I wanted to really I started to experiment with the 12-string acoustic guitar towards the end of the session. This is getting into the 60 songs before the 70s and 80s songs, meaning not time period, I mean I had written or recorded up to 60 songs at that point. So I was like, I'm going to switch up and play acoustic 12-string. I just was going through instruments. There's a whole piano phase too that's no one's heard yet. But so it really was like the first 12-string song, and it just worked. I hear elements of Alice in Chains. Strangely, I kind of hear Disintegration era Cure vibes in there, maybe in the bridge, and in the phasers and stuff. But none of that stuff ever gets in the way of it. Just sounds like a me song, and I'm just chasing that lyric, which is sort of describing a panic attack, a moment of shock, of whoa, you are in this moment and it is fucked up. What will you do? And I guess for me, I'm just staying in the moment in that song. I'm like trying to kind of to sort of place myself. Outbound Train was the second song written for the record, and it's very simple. It's a song about it's the middle of the night, you can't sleep, you live in Los Angeles, and you're fucked. You're fucked, your life is fucked, and you are trying to explain it to yourself. Or I was trying to explain it to myself and say, what does this mean? Who am I? Yeah, I'm just thinking openly in that song, which is awesome. Last chance before it slips away, throw it all away, and you can't go back again. What was Broken Anyway is it's a song about the last moments in anything, when you realize like you've almost totaled the car of your situation, whatever that is. You've totaled it so that you cannot drive it again. You're going to total it so you can't drive it again. This is what people do. This is, I think, how people free themselves. They often damage their own opinion, their own connection to something. Or maybe it's a mutual thing that people do when something's dysfunctional. And for me, it's like slowing down time just enough to see the last seconds and say, oh man, like what is left to say? Like, is there anything, is the last chance to have any discussion or to put anything into this before this moment of impact? And for me, I liked that. I liked the idea of going freeze time, put it into just milliseconds, and to only realize it's already totaled. Before it hits the wall, it's totaled. I'm on a tightrope, watch it as it swings, you can count down on New Year's Eve. You know I wanna see you. Tightrope was the first song I wrote for the album. I wrote it in the back of the bus. I wrote it after I fractured a rib on tour, and I love that song. There's so many elements in that song that I always wanted to say, or things that I would think to myself, like metaphors, observations, And they all kind of appear in that song. And that song is about the tension, for me, it's about the tension that you feel before the shit hits the fan. You know what's up. You know what's up, and you know the timer is set. And you maybe the character in the song, myself, or for a person listening, I think the idea is like, you feel the tension, but you haven't allowed yourself to really look at the clock. And that song is kind of taking you into that zone and being helpful. And then there's this moment in the end that goes into this really cool sort of free zone where I called Don Was and said, I need a sax player because I need an Eddie Money moment on my record. I need like a Eddie and the Cruisers moment. And he called in this guy that plays with the Stones sometimes, and Joe, and he just, first pass, he just blew our minds. He did it great another couple of times, but we're just like, well, they're all so good. But the first one was insane. We just kind of told you what it was. You heard the riff one time, and you just went in and you just threw this thing out, and mystifying, awesome.
Maybe tomorrow the sun will shine, but the moon is full, and what's on my mind is like a bad commercial.
I think We Disappear is like maybe the most revealing song on the record, because I think I actually go back and I'm not just taking accountability for where I think I was in the gist of things in this record, but it's also maybe me explaining to myself what I was doing, and also the flaws that I had in expectation. Expectation can take you out of the moment, and then it instantly puts you into a place of critique. And I think that I also answer questions that maybe were asked of me that I never got a chance to. It's me explaining myself out loud to the sky. It's me being an old man staring at the sky and going, clouds, what are you doing? Like, it's me, it's me being like a 78-year-old old man, like yelling at leaves in the front yard because you just raked them. But the leaves are some part of my personality that I hadn't come to terms with.